Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 42.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
Okay, have you ever been so excited about something that you just couldn't wait to do it? And that's kind of what's happened. I had an interview that I wanted to share with you immediately. It's like right after I did it, I was like, oh man, we've got to have this go live now. Because the information and the individual who I interviewed it was just so timely. It was so right. And it made so much sense that I wanted to share it with you. So I'm launching our episode and our series a little bit early in the week, simply because it was that important to me. I was that excited about it. And when my team heard it, they were excited about it. So I think you're going to be excited about it too. Make sure that you listen and move at the speed of instruction and do the things that you need to do in order to make the stuff that you hear happen. Now, there was also another reason that I wanted to make sure that we got this to you. Some of you already know, but many of you may not have had an opportunity yet to go over to Learn Investing Now or raisingprivatecapital.com. We're in the process of doing, or I'm about to launch actually, a new mastermind group. Last time I did a mastermind group, it was simply on the concept of wholesaling, and many individuals were able to gather that information, use that information, and go out there and transact business using none of their own money or credit, going out there to be able to do deals. Part of what happened for some of them is that they started getting involved in deals that were larger than they felt comfortable with because they didn't know how to get the money. Well, now many people say to me, Jay, how do I raise capital? Now you have an opportunity to learn. Go over to learninvestingnow.com. Get signed up for the mastermind group because it will be starting very, very soon. All right. So don't delay. And then the next thing that I was excited about was the fact that, this particular podcast I love doing. I'm going to keep doing it. We've also launched an daily podcast as well. So go over to Cashflow Diary Daily. It's Cashflow Diary Daily. I've got lots of content, and it takes a while to get some of it out. And I've done a number of speaking engagements, a number of live events, and there's just so much, stuff that we have in the archives. We figured that one way to get more of it out to you faster is to create a second podcast. So do me a favor. Leave a review on this one. Go over to the other one, download that one, leave a review there too. Because here's the thing. If you like it, others will like it. If you leave a review, they'll likely listen. And I want to help and get in front of as many people who are looking for this type of information as possible. Thanks. All right, and welcome to another episode of the CashflowDiary.com podcast. Glad that you are here. Hopefully you are enjoying the series that we're currently doing, finding great entrepreneurs all around the world even, who have found different ways to create cash flow, doing the things that they love, putting their own passions into action, and making a difference in the world. And that's one of the greatest things about being an entrepreneur is that you get to solve problems. Many of you've heard me say that before, but you solve the problems that you want to solve and in the ways that you are uniquely skilled at solving them. And that's one of the funnest parts of being an entrepreneur is figuring out how, what problem you can solve, how you can solve it, and what makes you unique in solving so. And one of the things that is often a challenge, that many of us entrepreneurs face is how do we get everything done? How do you get everything done? And one of the greatest things that I learned a long time ago is that wealth is a team sport. And then with that being the case, you only have to decide what position you want to play. And today I've got with me an individual who I believe you're going to enjoy. I mean, and just the times that I've been able to speak with him, we can get going down, tangents just about a very passionate subject because it's so crucial to be successful with what he has to say so that you can get your cause, your mission, your company's vision actually realized. And, one of the things that I hope you take away from this conversation is how you have the ability to do whatever it is you want. You just have certain skill sets that you need to gain. And the gentleman today is definitely qualified to help you and myself and everybody be able to get better at what it is that we're trying to do. I have with me today a gentleman by the name of Mr. Eric Kaufmann. He is known for guiding leaders to make better decisions and achieve better results. That's awesome. Native of Israel, lived and worked in South Africa, gaining 2 decades of experience in sales. That's 20 years. Okay, so now you're going to have access to 20 years worth of experience just in this episode, but not just in sales, but in management, leadership with many different very large companies, specifically 3M. And he's also worked as a consultant with Sony, T-Mobile, Gentech, Alcon Labs, and a whole bunch of other Fortune 1000 companies. But here's the part that makes him so interesting to me. Along with his real world business experience, he's got a range of other skills. And understand, guys, the magic sauce for many of us is in those other skills. But he has the ability, obviously, to be a great keynote speaker, does management consulting, clinical hypnotherapist. Now, here's where it gets really fun. Master scuba diving and instructor, adjunct professor of leadership and coaching at San Diego State University, and a speaker with Vistage International. Now, watch this. He's also been a lifelong practitioner of Zen meditation who once spent a year in silent meditation. A whole year. That's amazing to me. Living in a cabin he built himself in the mountains of New Mexico. I hope you are ready to hear Mr. Eric Kaufmann. Eric, you there?
I'm here, Jay.
This is awesome. Okay, I got to start with probably what most people want to know. How on earth do you spend 1 year in silent meditation in a cabin you build yourself?
It wasn't easy, honestly. I'd never built. I didn't grow up in a construction family. I didn't have a lot of experience in construction, but I've been practicing a meditation practice while working, and this went on for about 11 or 12 years. And there just came a point where I thought, okay, I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I had some flexibility and mobility, and I thought, I really want to know what it's like to completely, utterly, and without any distraction, dedicate myself to a meditation practice. Because I've been doing it, intensely for 11 years, 12 years, but I was also going to work. I was rising through the career ladder. I was in relationships, etc. And so I thought, well, what would be a way to do it that would really hit the spot? And so I decided to go all out or all in, depending on how you want to look at it. And I quit my job. I liquidated my 401k, took all my cash, donated it, so I gave it all away so I wouldn't be attached to anything. I shaved my head, and I went up to New Mexico where some friends of mine had a property up there. And I spent 3 months, literally 3 months every single day, building this 625 square foot cabin. So that was sort of, challenge 1, challenge 2, challenge 3. And then I sort of walked in, and in January, closed the door, and stayed there for a year. I had friends, those same friends that would bring me food and check in just to make sure I hadn't expired. Very, very glad that they did that.
Wow.
But that was the mechanics of it. But the actual experience had different phases. There was excitement. Oh, what am I? It's so cool. And then there was this profoundly deep depression that took over me about month 3 into it, where I suddenly realized I was all alone, and I was still unhappy. I was still frustrated. I was still blaming other people, and there was nobody there to blame. It became, Jay, a very interesting moment to realize that I was the creator of my life, that I was the writer of the story. I was the author of the play. I was the one who was shaping, crafting, and forming this experience, and I wasn't happy with the experience, and there was nobody to blame. And I think that put me into a real deep depression that lasted a couple months as I kind of sat with nobody to process this reality. and then through the practices and the meditation, found a way to be graceful with myself, to accept the unacceptable, to embrace the totality of who I am, and that began an unfolding process that allowed me to stay through. And the reason I left after a year is because around a year, I had this unexpected revelation that I really should get married, have children, and engage in a business that serves a larger community. That it wasn't okay to be isolated and restricted from people. So that's when I left that phase and came back and started, found a woman who was kind enough, clever enough, and courageous enough to be my wife.
Yes.
But yeah, it was an intense experience.
Indeed. Now, the title of your book is Leadership as a Hero's Journey, and it sounds like you're sharing with us a little bit a part of your own journey. What would you say, if I asked you, what would you say your book is about when it comes to, leadership as a hero's journey? Because it sounds like not only that experience, but all the other experiences combined, sounds like you've got some interesting stuff to share.
Fundamentally, the book is about creation. It's about this very important evolutionary journey that we have to take on as human beings to move away from the familiar, away from the known, away from the rehearsed, and to some degree outdated, and move towards the creation of a full expression of what our life means. And more practically, it's about the four virtues that I've seen play out over and over, both in history and religion, in business, in psychology. There are these four virtues that allow you, allow me, allow us to traverse this unknown and unfamiliar path and create a life and outcome that is both meaningful to us and productive to the society.
What I found interesting as I was going through, specifically in the introduction, and something you just said, was the whole creation process. How when you're by yourself with no one else to blame, you were creating what you were, in a sense, all of the reality that you were experiencing. And what I really like is the part where you talk about how, a thought is a thing. You are what you think. You become what you think about most. And you stress, that we have an element of control and influence in this process. What would you say to the person who's out there? I mean, you've had the corporate 9-to-5 job, and you found something that you're passionate about to help you and help other people. But how can I practically apply, those principles, this being one of them that you talk about? How can I practically do that today?
One of the first elements of these of all these principles, right? There's lots and lots of books and teachers and authors. You are, I am. There are many, many, many of us in this tribe, whether formal or informal. But I think underlying all of our efforts is to help facilitate for other people a better experience of their life. And so one of the fundamental elements about that is insight or awareness. I have to be aware of the current content. I mean, it's one thing to say, here's my goal, here's my vision, and that's real critical. I'm not saying that with any disregard. It is very important to say, what is the desired outcome that you want?
Right.
But then we have to do a real gut check and say, what do I currently have? And what I currently have is a reflection of what I currently believe, and what I currently believe is a contributor to what I'm thinking about on an ongoing basis. Now, to your point, I write that a thought is a thing. You are what you think, you become what you think about most. So if a thought is a thing, this is not an academic idea, it's a practical idea, and how do we know that? So if you think about somebody that you love, typically, you start feeling warmth in your chest, the smile comes to your face, the world looks a little bit brighter. If you think about, your financial troubles because, your creditors are after you and you don't know how you're going to cover your mortgage, your stomach gets tight, the world looks a little meaner, and people look suspicious. And the difference there is the quality, the content of the thought. So a thought is a thing. Things are things. Things are sort of, you can tell when something exists because it has an impact and influence, it has pressure on its environment. And if I think a positive thought, like somebody that I love, I feel good. So that thought has an impact, therefore it's a thing. I mean, do you follow that logic? A thought is an actual thing.
Absolutely.
And And what you are is you are you are what you think, and you become what you think about most. And so what people can do right away is not begin to change their thoughts, because that's what, we've been taught for decades through a lot of these personal development programs, is just choose a mantra, choose an affirmation, and evaluate that affirmation. And maybe you've done it, I know I have, and they have varying degrees of success, but usually there's some level of frustration saying, wow, I've been saying this affirmation 10,000 times, and I'm not remarkably different than I was before. What's
Right.
up? It's because while I'm saying that affirmation consciously, I continue to, underneath that affirmation, affirm the old thoughts that are creating the reality that I'm experiencing right now. So what I propose is, I thought of the thing, first and foremost, you have to become aware of what you're thinking. So as situations arise, it is becoming an observer to your own inner dialogue and listening with curiosity rather than with animosity. Because a lot of times, a lot of us, when we take on these affirmations, there's an element of animosity. And what I mean by that, Jay, is that I don't like who I am. I don't like my experience. I don't like what's going on. And as long as I don't like it, I want to push it away. I want to get rid of it. Now, if you want to get rid of somebody, they're typically offended. They're hurt. They are either going to skulk away or they're going to fight you. If you turn that into an inward sort of reflection and think about, if I don't like an aspect of me, if I want to push an aspect of me away, if I want to, remove an aspect of me, that aspect becomes defensive and holds on tighter. I hope that makes sense at some level.
Absolutely. I get it. I feel like I get it. I feel like I understand it. I feel like I've been through this process, although not consciously. I mean, that I guess that's kind of the benefit of of your book, is you can now go through it in a conscious state, because I can remember not long ago, one of the mantras that you were referring to and exercises that I did, and I think about this, is one of the first things that I was instructed to do was to state how much I wanted to earn on a monthly basis. And then I use that one sentence in 3 different ways. I would say, I want to earn $10,000 a month. He earns $10,000 a month. And then Jay earns $10,000 a month. Now, when you first do that, when I was first doing that, and when you said it subconsciously at the same time, any negative neuroassociations that I had to the idea of earning what I thought was a lot of money on a monthly basis would instantly come up and be part of what I would say. I would say, I earn $10,000 a month, and instantly I would be antagonistic with my own self and go, no, you don't. You can't do that. And it was just weird and funny to hear you quantify what I remember in a very succinct way. But having persevered through that process it's very, very key. And I tell people often that real estate is no different in any business. Real estate is just like any other business where you can develop cash flow, and nobody has a money problem. We all have an idea problem, and adjusting those ideas is what you're talking about, so that you can actually make forward progress towards the things that you're looking for in this experience.
That's exactly right. And what I'm proposing that might be a little bit different than some of the formulas that are out there is, when those antagonistic or negative or subconscious or deeper thoughts arise, that the path towards this evolutionary path, the hero's journey's path, is not necessarily to then do battle with that inner negative voice.
Yeah.
That's antagonistic. But rather to be curious about it. To be curious about it. And to be curious about it takes more courage than it does to just fight it off. Because the courage is to stand there and come face to face with our own internal limitations and fears. And because that's really what it's coming down to. It's coming down to whatever particular modality of fear that's ours, whether it's fear of rejection, or whether it's fear of humiliation, or whether it's fear of failure, loss of control. We have these sort of primordial fears, and they play out in different ways for different people. And when these negative or antagonistic or limiting thoughts come up, to me the interesting thing is not just to push them away and say your affirmation or mantra even louder, but rather to pause and courageously face that negative thought. Because the more you face it, the more you come close to it, the more you understand it, the more you can embrace it, the less pressure it has on you in the long term. This is a little bit counterintuitive. It doesn't mean you're not focusing on the $10,000 a month that Jay is deserving, but it means that when the negativity, when the limitation shows itself, we don't just overwhelm it with noise. We embrace it. And over time, things that you embrace become part of you, and they stop trying to limit you.
Totally.
So that's a different way to add to the general, familiar state of fighting it. It's not about fighting it. It's about learning to bring it into the totality of your experience and reduce its influence over you.
Okay. Now, right about now, you're like, no, I don't want to hear you, Jay. I want the interview to keep going. Well, we got to go through our cash flow question, and I'll promise I'll be fast. All right. So for those of you who may not know, the cash flow question is just an opportunity for you to send in your answers to the questions if you want an opportunity to win my upcoming book, Cash Flow Creation System, that I go through my entire business model inside the book. If you want to send in answers to the questions, it's 800-689-1764, 800-689-1764. Or if you would prefer email, feel free to send in your answers to cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com. All right. Last week's question was, in which year was the Federal Reserve created? In which year was the Federal Reserve created? The U.S. Federal Reserve, which is not federal, has no money, and kind of doesn't really belong to the U.S., but that's a whole nother story. The answer is 1913. 1913. This week's question, you're going to notice a theme. Where is it reported that the Federal Reserve was created? Where was it reported that the Federal Reserve was created? There's a specific location, geographic location that I'm looking for. Send in your answers to 800-689-1764, 800-689-1764, or cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com. Now, I'll get you back to the interview. Indeed, I love this so much. In fact, one of the things that used to get on my nerves a ton was when I would hear people say that you can't be afraid. And I'm like, no, learning to understand my own fears is part of the reasons why I can help people now, because I understand the fears that they're going with, but more importantly, the fears that a seller may have in terms of negotiations, and it helps me communicate with people just by being able to relate to them. So I'm kind of curious what you would say to someone who is, maybe they're looking at, starting their business by writing their first offer. Maybe they're in the process of, they think they want to do an iPhone app. They think they heard about this thing called cash flow, and they're like, man, I want some of that, but I'm too afraid. What would you say their response should be?
I like what you said. This idea of fearlessness is remarkably ridiculous. It makes for good marketing. It makes for sexy advertising. It makes for good slogans. It sells books, because all of us have fear. And so if anyone says to me, be fearless, and I'll teach you how to be fearless, that's very attractive. The reality is it's ridiculous. There is no possibility of being fearless. The issue is not about having no fear. The issue is about developing courage, cultivating courage. Fear is biological. Every animal, every organism reacts in a defensive way against the perceived sense of danger. That's what we call fear. Fear is a response to danger, and the sheer reality of being alive means that we recoil, react to perceived danger, and that's called fear. So fear is biological. It is wired into every neural pathway in our brain and cell in our body. This is not a function of being fearless. Fearless would be either somebody who's dead or lobotomized or somehow mentally ill. Neither of those is a terrific option for an investor.
I'll skip those. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And so the question is, how can I be courageous? How can I cultivate courage? And to your point, it's unavoidable that we're going to have to face the fear. And therein, again, that's one of the four virtues that I talk about in this hero's journey, leadership as a hero's journey, life as a hero's journey, is that we're not going to be without fear. The question is, how do we relate to fear? And often what we're afraid of is the various potential damage we're envisioning downstream, right? So I could lose my money, I could lose my reputation, I could lose my comfort, I could lose my relationship. It's usually a sense of something that's going to be lost. And so the idea of cultivating courage, for me, as I mentioned before, begins with willingly facing what we'd rather walk away from. And I'm not saying conquering or defeating it or removing it. I'm facing it. Half the battle is willing to just be present to and be with and embrace that which we'd rather run away from. So whether that's a relationship that's in conflict or whether that's a belief that is in conflict, like, I want to start this, I want to invest, but I could lose my money, the market could go south. There's all these reasons why it could, but we have to face those reasons first. Second, I propose that. Go ahead.
No. I like this. This is because what you just hit on is something that I deal with all the time when I'm dealing with new investors in their relationships. They have this relationship to money and what has happened to them into the past that prevents them from taking the actions. Because the common, here's probably one of the most common things I get is, especially now, they're like, well, I had a lot of money. My 401k is now a 201k, and I've got that money back now. I've been able to make it back, but I'm afraid of it happening again. And then they can face things. They can know about things like inflation and the lack of Social Security and all the things that they're looking at in the future and go, well, that's so far off. I'm not as afraid of that as I am of losing the money today when simple math will tell you won't have enough unless you do something. And it's always just an interesting struggle to hear people how they're going to deal with it. And that becomes my question to them. It's like, I understand exactly what you're feeling. I felt feelers like that too. Many people do. I submit, and I'm very curious to hear what you'd have to say on this. I submit the difference between those who are successful and those who are not isn't, as you say, a lack of fear, because I don't believe that either. I believe it's how they've learned how to respond to those fear instincts and what they do because when they feel them. What would you say to that?
I agree completely because we all have fear. So it's a matter of how did we learn to deal with those fear instincts, to your point. And one of the things that I propose to everyone to do is to ask this very simple question. What am I really afraid of? What am I really afraid of? Because it's very rarely the surface level answer, right? So I want to invest in this new property. I want to build a team that's going to help me flip houses because it's an opportunity now in the market. But, oh boy, the subs are unreliable. They could just walk away with my money. They could do it after, they could be slow on their project. I could be overbilled. I could be slow to get it listed and lose my money. I mean, there's all these things that are real possibilities, right? These are not delusions. These are real possibilities. But that's not really what the person's afraid of. So asking yourself, what am I really afraid of, is a critical component of cultivating courage because we have to name something in order to tame it. We have to be able to relate to it in order to embrace it and change its influence on us. And so what am I really afraid of? And what we're really afraid of typically comes down to one of three or four things. We're afraid of failure, right? We just don't want to look bad, seem foolish, or lose power and control. We're afraid of rejection. We don't want to be pushed away. We don't want to lose a relationship. We're afraid of humiliation. We don't want to show up as though we're stupid or incompetent in the world. And usually those three are sort of banging around in our heads, and they have their own versions in each one of us. But if I'm afraid of humiliation or rejection or failure, then I need to ask myself, well, what can I do to appease or deal with that fear? Because that's really what's going on. It's not the subs, it's not the market, it's not the rate. It's my fear that I'm going to look like an idiot. That's what I have to work on. That's amazing. Begins to give me a different angle than just dealing with, I'll make another plan. It's not just about another plan. It's about greater awareness.
So true. It's so funny that you said that last one. I started smiling simply because I often tell everyone there are two things that it's impossible to do simultaneously. You can't learn something and look good at the same time. And because we're so busy trying to look good, we never learn. It's because we don't want to look stupid, and it's that's just funny that was one of the three. I had no idea that you're going to say that. So this is and these are the very things. And people come to me and they say, "Well, teach me how to write an offer." And it's not even about how to write an offer. It becomes a lot about how to deal with all this stuff that you're afraid of. And I just love it. And then the people who overcome that are the ones that end up, the ones that end up owning the properties and taking the next steps and starting their businesses and developing cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. And I find it interesting how willing you are to question, and you're asking us to question those very things. In fact, I'm going to start questioning more because, from that discovery process, this awareness, I can actually do something about it. If I'm not aware of it, I can't.
Right, and there's a couple other things we can talk about also practically for cultivating that fear, because just naming it is one, and then there's a couple others, not the least of which is exactly what you're doing, finding supporters, allies. Every hero in every story has to face great challenges on his or her own, but every hero in every story across all cultures, across all time, have had allies. It's either the magical ally or the friend or the sidekick. But the idea that we go it alone is perhaps the most debilitating of all the ideas to entrepreneurs, to leaders, and to human beings. The idea that somehow I am going to do this on my own, by myself, that I'm John Wayne, I'm going to ride in, I'm going to clean out the town, and I'm going to make everything right.
Right.
It's an addiction. It's not serving anyone. The reality. I love what you said in the very beginning. I absolutely love it. Wealth is a team sport. And we can go even bigger than that and say success is a team sport, whether that's wealth and money, whether it's, spiritual evolution, whether it's building community.
Agreed.
Wealth, success is a team sport. And this notion that we do it alone is an immature impulse, right? If I have two kids, and I remember both of them when they were in their 2-3 years old, it was all, no, me, no, I want to do it. No, me. And, and that's fine when you're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old. It's not so attractive when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s or 50s. Get over it. It's about working with others, including this idea of cultivating courage. It doesn't have to be alone. I still have to deal with it. But who's my ally? Who can I talk to? Who will advise me? Who will support me? Who will encourage me? Who will hold me accountable? That's an important contribution to this idea of cultivating courage. It does not have to be all alone.
No. And in fact, I say the weakest point is when you're by yourself, especially when it comes to real estate. And because that's what I think about. I think about real estate a lot for obvious reasons. And, another manifestation of that I've seen of that is when people go to buy real estate, they'll say things like, well, I'll just buy one house. And I'm like, well, that's your riskiest position. If you had 10, the other 9 can support the one if something happens. And that, it's that same thought process across many different avenues. And it's that thought process that allows us to expand our influence. And I think, that there are a number of people right now listening to you and I who have great causes, great things that they'd like to have happen, but they've got this in the way. They've got great passion and they got great enthusiasm about what it is that they're looking for, but they have I have to do it all by myself mentality. So what would you prescribe as a way to stop that? What are is there a practical, is there something, do I got to do 50 push-ups? What is it? Tell me, how are we going to get over this?
How are we going to get over this kind of urge to do it alone?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a maturation process. That is the hero's journey. That's the evolutionary process of our life. And I think how we do it is, at some point, you really do have to swallow hard and reach out and ask for help. And I think that the folks who are willing to do so, one element of it is education. People sometimes don't know that doing it on their own is a limitation. So if they listen to this program, if they listen to you, if they read my material, there's lots of teachers who are teaching that. Success is a team sport. Wealth is a team sport. I love that statement. And so getting that notion, being exposed to the idea, that's the power of education. So that's one. Then two, it becomes a matter of finding, um, uh, articulating the intention. What is it that I want to create? So to your point, Jay is, he is earning 10,000 a month. Jay is earning 10,000 a month. I am earning 10,000 a month. There's an intention. There's a purpose. There's a goal. There's something you're striving for that is bigger than what you've accomplished in the past. And I think identifying that does two things. One is it gives you a sense of direction. Two, it raises all those fears and anxieties, right? Because suddenly you start thinking, well, no, I can't, I won't, I haven't, it's not possible. That's the conversation of anxiety in your head, fear in your head. And when you have that clear desire and you have some awareness around what you're afraid of, then reaching out to someone and say, help me, becomes much more concrete, right? Help me with what? Well, help me accomplish this. How can I help you? Well, this is what's coming up for me. Any ideas on how I can overcome it? And so we have to do a little bit of pre-work in order to make ourselves available to find a good mentor, a good ally, a good teacher. And that work in part is that state your desired outcome. What is your intention? What's your goal? What is it you're trying to create? One. Two, begin to become aware of what's getting in the way. And then you have to find somebody whom you trust and whom you look up to. And the reality is that sometimes the mentor or the ally will fall short. Sometimes a relationship doesn't work. Sometimes a person isn't who you thought they were. That's no reason not to do it again. Kind of like saying, I broke up with a girl, she broke my heart, I'm never going to be in a relationship again.
Right.
There's a logic to it that's not logical.
Right.
I don't know if we've all gone through it, but I certainly have. I've broken up with girlfriends. I thought, oh my God, I'm crushed. There's no way I can ever be in love again. And guess what? That didn't turn out to be true. So taking the small step to reach out to somebody who's familiar, who's trusted, who I feel safe with, that's a big deal. Safety. That would be the first one. I wouldn't recommend to somebody to reach out to their first mentor, to be somebody so removed and so distant from them, either in terms of authority or position or accomplishments, that it's hard to relate to them, right? My first allies, my first helpers ought to be people that I can feel safe with. But I need to reach out and saying, here's my objective, here's my goal, and here's what's going on for me. So there has to be a willingness to be somewhat vulnerable or transparent, right? I can't ask somebody to be my mentor, my helper, my ally, and then hide from them all the things that I'm struggling with. So set the objective, become aware of the inner dialogue, find somebody safe to work with, and begin to explore with them how to move forward, how to be accountable, how to be motivated, how to be encouraged.
Oh my God, it's so funny. We get a number of emails and calls from time to time from individuals who are reaching out, looking for similar help in this particular area of what we do. And occasionally they're wondering, why am I asking the questions about what they need help with and what's going on? And this is the very reason. It's like, I don't know what direction, I don't know where to send you. I may not be the person you're looking for. I don't know what to tell you. You may think I'm your solution, but I may not be. We may not be. I don't know. And this is so true when it comes to a particular investment. Many times people make an investment without understanding what they want from it and how it's going to affect their life, positively, and what the potential risks are negatively, and we just go in blindly, and it's bigger than we should have done, or it just doesn't accomplish the goals. And this is it's interesting to me hearing. It's like I'm having so many conversations with so many different people right now. I'm like, yep, this person and this person. All these names are coming to my head of people who I've dealt with, who I'm going to do my best to make sure that they hear this one. This is so good. Okay, I know. You're like, no, don't stop. I had to. There was just so much more conversation that we got into, that to put it all in one episode just would be a very, very long episode. So I do my best to keep these within a certain time frame so that you can, listen to them, on the way to work or jogging or etc. And you just never know when you're going to run into, that quality content or an additional person. Remember, I've said it before, I say it again. You're going to be the same today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And clearly, we have met an extraordinary person, so much so that I wanted to release an episode well ahead of time. And I just want to remind you one more time, go over to learninvestingnow.com, learninvestingnow.com, or raisingprivatecapital.com. And get started so that you can join with us in the mastermind group. If you've ever said to yourself, I'd like to get my iPhone or a technology company, an iPhone app business, or if I wanted to produce a music CD, or whatever it is that you have said, and then goes, if I only had the money, now is the time for you to do something about it, because that's exactly what I'm showing a select group of individuals how to go and get the money for whatever project it is that you're looking for. Anyway, I've enjoyed this particular part of the interview. I know you have, or at least I believe you have. Again, leave a review, because this one was, in my opinion, it was good. If you didn't like it, okay, great. Whatever, I tried. Sorry. In the meantime, don't forget, on Monday, we're going to have the next part, and I guarantee you want to hear that one as well. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, cashflowdiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.